We will pivot to our second topic, a bit of a somber topic for sure. Sadly, Mike, me and you have been fans of comic books for a long time. And as me and you get older, some of the greats of this industry are sadly passing away. And an absolute titan of the Marvel Comics and DC Comics industry, Jim Shooter, sadly passed away this week. Mike, I'll kick it to you because you're more of the comic book historian on this. When you think about Jim Shooter, his legacy, who he was, what comes to mind for you?
A couple of things. I'm reading this book right now called Marvel: The Untold Story or something. It has a great section in it about Jim and his Marvel years. Um, Jim was a visionary as a teenager, and he loved Marvel Comics. Um, but as it happened, when he was a kid, he thought DC Comics he would have a better chance at writing for DC than he would for Marvel. And he felt that DC needed more help. And he started sending in script ideas. The first script idea he sent in at 13 was accepted. And his career started from there. He worked for DC, I think, for about 5, 6 years or whatever. And then he finally got his dream job in the 70s writing for Marvel. And went on to be the editor and publisher, and it had an amazing career. But he was a visionary in so many ways, and controversial. There's a lot of folks there that don't think
He
highly of
rubbed the
him.
wrong way. Yeah.
But I will say this week, there's been a lot of really great videos about people lauding him, especially if you haven't seen it. The one Rob Liefeld did is amazing. And I'm happy to see him get, being paid tribute to. But yeah, when he left Marvel, like he knew he was always thinking years ahead. For example, in the 80s, after he left Marvel, he started Valiant Comics, and he understood the potential of the indies, 20, 30 years before they really started to break out. And just so many things. But please do go on, and check out some good stuff. I know the guy from Comic Tropes did one several years about him, which I think is really fair and balanced,
Yeah.
because he does have his detractors, but you got to hand it to the guy. I mean, he was in the business for many many years, from being a
I mean, you
fanboy
look
at
at just
13
the
to
list
becoming
of
a
things.
pro.
Well, I mean, you look at his writing as a teenager, and then you just look at when he's EIC at Marvel, what he's responsible for. I mean, Claremont and Byrne on Uncanny X-Men and Fantastic Four, Frank Miller's Daredevil, Walt Simonson on Thor, Roger Stern on Avengers and Spider-Man.
He made these key decisions at a
Yeah,
time when the Marvel was outselling DC, but they were a little bit, with no rudder. And he put these creative teams together. And he's also been credited with having faith in Frank Miller where others did not.
yeah.
And I will send it over to you to talk about.
No, I mean, you talk about, I think the
Yeah,
biggest thing is Claremont X-Men, Frank Miller Daredevil. You're talking probably the definitive runs for most people for those characters. This is the guy who made that call, right? I think he also Secret Wars. He was the one who saw the potential in kind of
yeah,
crossover events. I believe with the Dazzler comic book, he got that into specialty shops. So I mean, he's a guy who saw the potential of the medium. And I think the thing is, like, you'll hear some stories about people who didn't necessarily always like the way he did it. But what it reminds me of, and you and I always talk sports on here, there's some head coaches out there that aren't the most beloved guy, but they're fantastic at what they do. So, like, Bill Belichick's a great example of this. Bill Belichick was known as a stern, kind of a jerk sort of guy. But from a coaching aspect, there is no more successful coach in the history of the NFL because he knew what changes to make, who to keep, who to get rid of, what to launch, which initiatives, how to move his offense, how to move his defense, and it resulted in 6 Super Bowls for the Patriots, the most successful run. Jim Shooter is that for Marvel Comics. When you look at Secret
yeah,
Wars, Frank Miller's Daredevil, Simonson on Thor, Frank Miller Daredevil,
right?
Chris Claremont X-Men, John Byrne Fantastic Four. You're talking the majority of what most of us see is like the classics for people, now it's from his era, right?
Bronze
Outside
Age
the Stan
Marvel.
and Jack era, he's the guy who ran all of that. I think he also with the Treasury edition of Superman and Spider-Man. I mean, like he
Yeah,
did so much, and sadly he's what we're missing from comic books now. What Jim Shooter
truly.
did such a good job at is taking a talent like Frank Miller and recognizing you and Daredevil is a marriage made in heaven, or Claremont and X-Men and going, you are the right match for this. We don't seem to have people who do that anymore, and
And
that's what's
he
desperately needed.
and we talk about this a lot, but and Stan Lee was that way, I believe, with Marvel in the early years. But of course, Stan had moved on in the 70s. He was out in Hollywood trying to, also a visionary, right? He was trying to take these properties to television, movies, and cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it was some success in the 70s. But that's where Stan was, and Jim was left to captain the ship. And I think where a lot of his detractors were, he was, could be a hands-on kind of editor, where he called the shots and helped plot a lot of these, um, uh, along with his creative team to make sure that they were going in the right direction, because he had a vision. And I know a lot of creatives didn't like that, but the fact was that Marvel needed a vision at that point in time, and he provided it. And like you said, Bronze Age Marvel, pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
And
No.
if that was all he did amazing things. But that's not all he did. He also had the stuff when he was a teenager. He also
No.
had his,
13,
yeah,
13 submitted comics and getting him approved. I mean, it's just what
yeah.
a legendary, creative, and he's literally, we are missing Jim Shooter from modern comics. That is
Oh
why
my
I
gosh,
think
I
we're the
know.
place that we're in. Is if we had a Jim Shooter still, I think some of these garbage fire ideas like Nazi Captain America never see the light of day. And we probably wouldn't be in an industry where we go 5 years with no Fantastic Four comic book and year or two with no Captain
But we're
America
doing a movie,
being
but
canceled.
there's
Yeah.
no comic, but we're doing a movie. No, Jim Shooter would, yeah, that's what we need. We need, a heavy-handed editorial staff, and I kind of
That
see
knows what
that.
they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he certainly did. Just an absolute legend. Rest in peace, Jim Shooter. But great comic creator. Let us know your guys' thoughts on Jim Shooter. What do you think his legacy is and the best work that he did in Marvel, in your opinion?